Good. Okay, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The September 29th meeting of the Windsor Catholic District School Board. Father Larry, if you could start us off with a prayer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Valentinas. As we know from news items, COVID-19 is kicking up its heels again. Phase 2 is hit parts of our province. So here's a prayer in time of pandemic, which we still are in. Loving God, kind shepherd that you are, look kindly upon us, your flock, who are bowed down by the dark valley of this pandemic. Hear our prayer and bring comfort to all of us. Grace with wisdom, your spirit, political and religious leaders. Give consolation to those who are suffering and to families and friends who accompany them. Guide with strength our healthcare workers, aiding the sick and the dying. Protect our students and our teachers. Grant courage to all, from our first responders providing essential services and the necessities of life. In this time of darkness and uncertainty, O God, may we be beacons of hope, of goodness and mercy to all in need. And we make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Our Lady of Good Counsel, pray for us. Yeah. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father Larry. Next, we'll we normally traditionally open the meetings with a land acknowledgement. While it is a well-traveled land, we would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. We are grateful to work, to learn, and to live in this area. Recording of attendance, all trustees are present and participating electronically. Under the approval of the agenda, there are no amendments to the agenda as circulated, so I'll need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Mastrometti, support yes. Trustee Soulier, that the September 29, 2020 regular board meeting agenda be approved as distributed. Anyone opposed? And that carries. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest pursuant to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? None are noted. Moving on, there are no presentations or delegations listed this evening. So we'll move on to item 9, the action items. And 9A is the minutes of the special regular board meeting of September 15th, 2020. I'll need a mover and a seconder for that.
I'll move it, Mary.
Mary Domena, support Mary Heath. Moved by Trustee Domena, seconded by Trustee Heath, that the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 15th, 2020 be adopted as distributed. Questions, comments? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Thank you. There are no items from the Committee of the Whole Board and Camera meeting at this point, so we'll move on to communications. No external communications. Internally, we have 10B1, which is the Summer Learning Program. I'll need a mover and a seconder on that.
Trustee Soulier, move.
Trustee Tomaso seconds it.
And support by Trustee Di Tomaso, that the board receive the Summer Learning Program 2020 as information. Mr. Director, Superintendent Burney, any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to give Executive Superintendent Burney and Superintendent Farron an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Through you, Chair Valentinas. So from the past 7 years, we've hosted our summer learning program in a variety of locations. A number of our Catholic elementary schools, Central Park Athletics. The CEC, our Catholic Education Center, was a host to 2 classrooms a few years ago, and the latest this past summer in a virtual setting. The summer learning program over the years has been funded through CODE, Council of Ontario Directors of Education. We're very grateful for the annual funds that Windsor Essex Catholic District School Board utilizes to support our young learners in the areas of literacy, numeracy, recreational, and STEM activities. The program continues to benefit our students in an academic, structured, and organized manner, our educators in utilizing teaching strategies via professional learning, especially in this online format, as well as our parents through parent engagement opportunities. Tonight's Google Slide presentation showcases our virtual summer learning program for both grades 3 and 4 and grades 6 to 8. As both Superintendent Farron and I present tonight's information, you will observe what we've learned in the virtual summer learning program and the connection to this year's virtual learning environment in the virtual school. I'll ask Superintendent Farron to proceed.
Thank you and good evening. Our summer learning program is entitled Minds on Learning Academy, and traditionally the program has been offered to primary students to help minimize the summer learning slide, as well as solidify concept learned throughout the school year. This year, we're fortunate to receive additional funding, which allowed us to offer our summer learning program to our junior and intermediate students as well. It was in May when CODE announced that the summer learning program would once again be available to boards, but this year in a virtual format. We immediately began planning and were pleasantly surprised by the high level of interest from both families and educators. Ministry funding available from the summer staffing supports for special education was used to hire a learning support teacher for each of the 9 classrooms, as well as 1 educational assistant. So each classroom was supported by 3 teachers. The 3-teacher model allowed for daily small group instruction in each one of our classrooms. In total, 176 students participated, and this was the highest number of participants to date in one of our summer learning programs. Student and teacher totes were provided to all participants, so each was carefully thought out as it related to curriculum expectations. In addition, the totes included supporting resources for parents, and principals delivered the totes to all students the last week of June. Our grade 3 and 4 program consisted of 5 classrooms. This first classroom combined students from H.J. LaSalle, W.J. Langlois, and L.A. Damaris. And this class consisted of 22 students. Students were actively engaged online for 2 hours each day with live, real-time learning with the teachers. So each day was started with a prayer and morning routine. You will notice throughout this presentation images and names of student participants. Please know that all have provided consent to share their beautiful smiling faces as well as their insightful feedback. Students from Our Lady of Perpetual Help, St. Christopher, St. Angela, and Immaculate Conception were combined to make a classroom consisting of 22 students. Classroom 3 was a combination of students from Sacred Heart, St. James, and St. Joseph in River Canard. You may notice from the students' comments that their confidence had grown as a result of their participation. Classroom 4 consisted of students from both St. John de Brebeuf and St. Louis. And classroom 5 consisted of 18 students from St. Teresa of Calcutta and St.Rose School. The literacy block consisted of 15 minutes to read a whole group setting, followed by 20 minutes of guided reading and 15 minutes of guided writing in small groups. The math block was divided into a 10-minute math starter game, followed by 10-minute number talk, and then 30 minutes of problem solving through small group instruction.
Now we have grades 6 to 8, some slides to feature these students. So when CODE announced funding would be available for this particular age group, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, we were pleasantly surprised at the interest from our 3 middle schools. In its first year, we approached our 3 middle schools, Assumption, Corpus Christi, and Cardinal Carter, and their K-6 feeder schools of St. James, St.Rose, St. Teresa of Calcutta, and St. Louis. Some of our English language learners required support from our settlement workers in schools. Our focus was on gap closing in the area of literacy and numeracy, as well as targeted interventions through small group instruction. You can see here that classroom 2 of 4 in Leamington, the St. Louis site, has 14 students. Classroom 3 in Leamington, Cardinal Carter Catholic Middle School. As you can see, this group really was a group of 30, and we divided into 14 and 16. So this was the Carter Middle School students. You can see their focus here is on math and problem solving around using whiteboards and multiplication and fraction facts. And that actually some fun math games were engaging for our students. For our classrooms in Windsor, St.Rose, Corpus Christi, as well as St. Teresa of Calcutta, this was unique because we had a student join the classroom with special education learning needs that required an educational assistant. The student thoroughly enjoyed the learning experience, not only from a literacy numeracy component, but also the daily physical activity. That was the child's highlight. The parent expressed her deepest thanks in including her child in this virtual learning experience. Here you can see literacy for grades 6 to 8 students consisted of shared interactive reading, followed by guided reading and guided writing lessons, especially in revisions and editing processes for writing. Math comprised of math starters, a purposeful number talk, problem solving, and an independent consolidation task. A true focus on fractions was also observed during the 3-week program. The use of manipulatives, as you can see in the top left-hand corner, using fraction strips and then putting them on the actual number line. The use of whiteboards as well as an interactive whiteboard called Jamboard is also used for understanding math concepts and student engagement. And these activities are used in our virtual elementary school to date.
To keep our students engaged, fun body breaks and theme days were incorporated into the program. So body breaks involved a lot of dancing, stretching, meditation, exercising, and scavenger hunts around the house. Examples of theme days were Crazy Hair Day, Rainbow Day, and Fun in the Sun Day. Parents were invited to attend weekly virtual learning sessions with their child. So parents were provided all the necessary materials to support their child's learning at home. A Swiss worker was hired to support our families of English language learners in both programs. They supported parents by calling and translating information, as well as providing them with feedback on their child's progress throughout the program. At the end of the program, parents were invited to provide feedback on their child's summer learning experience, and all of the feedback we received was overwhelmingly positive.
As you can see here, United Way donated backpacks to our grades 6 to 8 summer learning students that included back to school materials to support the continuation of their learning in a variety of areas. Our students were very appreciative of this generous donation. So as always, we prepared next steps. As you can see, moving forward, we'll continue to implement new learning from the math strategy to build upon what we've learned in the summer learning math area. Continue to embed a balanced approach to literacy with a focus on guided reading. We also learned from the resources that we purchased in this area. In the area of literacy, Scope magazine, also received as an electronic version, was also purchased for our virtual elementary school this year. So again, what we've learned from summer learning, we continue to embed in our virtual learning elementary school, along with Superintendent LaFazzo. We continue to increase the number of English language learners. That's always a goal of ours, to participate in our summer learning program. Continue to offer STEM as a component, including robotics, Lego, and coding, and extra opportunities we will explore next year with summer learning based on the funding that is available. We are always very creative with the funding that we receive, and we always try to expand because we know that's an area that the board wishes us to explore. In conclusion, Superintendent Farron and I would like to acknowledge the work of our program staff during the month of June to plan and prepare for our very structured academic virtual summer learning program. I would be remiss if I didn't mention their names: Ginny Reichman, Michelle Yvonne, Laura Zewick, Amy Benson, and Robin Grondin. Also, Pat Stanley, our regional lead from Code, was very appreciative because she actually participated as a virtual learner in our summer learning program in July. And she said it was very wonderful, worthwhile to be a virtual learner in our school system. So at this time, we are available, Melissa and I, to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Burney and Superintendent Farron, for the wonderful, wonderful presentation. I love seeing the comments. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Overwhelmingly positive. Who knew that summer school was going to be so much fun? I think it's a testament to the work that was done and all people involved. Thank you. Are there questions of Superintendent Burney or Superintendent Farron?
I have something to say.
Trustees, questions or comments? Trustee
Yes.
Polifrone.
Yep. I just have a comment. I just want to say well done. Very nice.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Okay, so the motion has been moved and supported in terms of receiving the presentation for the learning program, summer learning program as information. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 10B2, which is the trustee attendance report. I'll need a mover and a seconder for that.
Moved.
I'll move it, Trustee Demena.
Moved by Trustee Polifrone, supported by Trustee Demena, that the board received the report regarding trustee attendance for January to August 2020 as information. All in favor? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Thank you. 10B3 is the 2019-2020 third interim financial variance report. I'll need a mover and a seconder to receive that.
I move.
Moved by Trustee Heath, support by
Trustee
Trustee
Soulier.
Demena.
Trustee Soulier, that the 2019-2020 third interim financial variance report be received as information. Mr. Director or Superintendent King?
Executive Superintendent King, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Director. In the report before you this evening, the board is forecasting an in-year surplus of $1.5 million at year-end. That's the projected year-end result based on the board's forecast of its in-year operations. Now, if trustees recall, we had set aside $4.5 million of our accumulated surplus at the end of 2018-19 for the purpose of funding post-retirement benefit pressures in 2019-20 and 2020-21. Now, the amount of the PRB pressure we have in 2019-20 is $2.8 million, and in 2020-21, the pressure is $1.7 million. So when you add those two together, that's how we came up with the amount of the $4.5 million to set aside. So because we plan to pay for $2.8 million of our 2019-20 post-retirement benefit expense from accumulated surplus, as opposed to from our in-year revenues, we end up with an adjusted in-year surplus by the ministry's definition of $4.3 million. And you can see this in the third column of numbers in Appendix A, which is on page 26 of your agenda package. And again, the adjusted in-year surplus is higher since we don't have to pay for our 2019-20 post-retirement benefit expense from our in-year revenue, but rather from accumulated surplus. So overall, this report does show a more favorable result than the last one you were presented with for a few reasons. Enrollment is up since that last report. And also there are some expenditure savings that resulted from the school closures, such as savings in utilities, plant supplies, etc. Further explanations of the financial results are summarized in Appendix A, again on page 26 of your agenda package. An enrollment summary is provided in Appendix B, a staffing summary in Appendix C, and detailed schedules of revenues and expenses can be found in Appendices D and E. We have detailed explanations of the expenditure variances contained in the report. These results are for the third quarter of the fiscal year, and we plan to produce a final report in November based on actual 12-month activity as of August 31st. At this time, we're prepared to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Superintendent King. Trustees, are there any questions regarding the third interim financial variance report? Any questions for for Superintendent King? I guess you did a great job of explaining it. Thank you. Okay, it's been moved, it's been supported that the 2019-2020 third interim financial variance report be received as information. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Thank you. The next item is the 2019-2020 fourth quarter procurement report. Mr. Director? Superintendent? Whoops, I'm sorry. Let's move it first. I'll need a mover and a seconder. So
Alexander moves.
I'm sorry. Trustee Alexander moves it. Support by
Demena.
Trustee Demena. Thank you. That the 2019-2020 fourth quarter procurement report be received as information. Mr. Director or Superintendent King?
Executive Superintendent King, but Mr. Chair, there's nothing to report on this. It's just a report for information brought to trustees. But Executive Superintendent King, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Director, but we're available for questions if there are any.
They are available for questions. Trustees, any questions regarding the fourth quarter procurement report? Sir, it's been moved. It's been supported. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? And that carries. Thank you. That brings us to the policy plan review. I'll need a mover and a seconder regarding that. Moved by
I move. Trustee DiTomaso.
I second.
Trustee Tomaso, support Trustee Master-Mate, that the board receive as information the status of the 5-year policy review plan. Any comments from administration?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any questions regarding that? If not, it's been moved and supported. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Thank you, and that carries then. That the board receives information the status of the 5-year policy review plan. We then have a verbal report regarding the preliminary enrollment, staffing, school reorganization information for elementary and secondary schools for 2020. I need a mover and a seconder to hear that.
I move.
Moved by Trustee Heath, support by Trustee Alexander, that the board receives information, the preliminary enrollment, staffing, school organization information for elementary and secondary schools for September 2020.
Excuse me, what is that removing?
Okay, I thought I saw you raise your hand there. That the board receives information. This is item 10.6, 10B6. The preliminary enrollment and staffing school organization.
There's no, I don't know the report. There's no report here.
No, it's going to be a verbal report. We're going to hear it.
So we're moving the report before we, all right, fine. Okay.
Yep. That's the way I was told that procedurally we should be doing it.
Okay.
Is there, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Superintendent Norris and Superintendent Ulichny, as well as Superintendent LaFaza, will give each individual reports with their respective responsibilities. Superintendent Norris.
Thank you, Mr. Director, and through you, Chair Valentinas. I can report to you a verbal report on the elementary enrollment numbers. Our elementary enrollment as of today are 13,021 students. 9,235 of those are in-person, our live school, representing about 71% of our elementary population. 29% of that population has elected to attend our virtual school, representing 3,786 of our students. With respect to our enrollment, we had budgeted for elementary enrollment back in the spring, much prior to, or just prior to our pandemic situation. At that time, we had anticipated some decline in our enrollment numbers just because of the large number of grade 8 students graduating from our elementary schools. Our enrollment forecast back in the spring was 13,200 students. We are down somewhat from that to the tune of 179 students system-wide, and we can attribute much of that to some of the JKSK numbers. We had 117 students specifically who registered with us back in February, for instance, when we had our JKSK open houses. We believe a number of those families have now elected not to attend. Quite frankly, we believe out of the concern for the unknown, the pandemic situation, and the reality of JKSK where there is not mandatory attendance. We don't have mandatory attendance under the Education Act until grade 1. We are hopeful that we've had a smooth startup. We've established our virtual schools. We're hopeful that some of these families will opt back in. We have our families having the election to make that change at the end of October, beginning of November. We absolutely will be reaching out to these families, welcoming them back and hoping they will join us. In the normal course, we do get students registering through the school year, and we are in fact continuing to accept registrations now. With respect to staffing for our enrollment, with the creation of the virtual school, concentration on reducing class sizes so we can support physical distancing has resulted in the additional hire of about 20 temporary teachers to service our students. We have been successful in supporting physical distancing in our live schools. We've reduced numbers throughout our grade levels. Primary classes, grades 1 to 3, all of our classes in the live school would be under 20. Classes from 4 to 8, where the regular ministry regulations, we would look at regular class sizes in that grade level, or those grade levels, like 26 in a split class, 29 in a straight. The majority of our classes are under 24. Many of them are in fact under 20. As a result, we have reduced class sizes to support that physical distancing throughout our system in our live schools. We will be reporting to you on the elementary enrollment with a substantive report in October with a breakdown of all of the class organizations by school. I'd be pleased at this point, though, to answer any questions you might have on the preliminary report. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Norris. Should we hear from first of all, before we move on, are there any questions regarding the report presented by Superintendent Norris? Trustees?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair.
Please, Trustee Soulier, Vice Chair Soulier.
I'm just very pleased to hear what our class sizes are for the elementary level. I think that that's really great news to see that we were able to keep our class sizes down that low. Happy to hear it. And just wondering what we're anticipating if we have more students coming into in-person learning in November. Will there be significant addition of more classes, or will this class size number go up?
Thank you for that question, Trustee Soulier. We will have to wait and see what that looks like. You know as well as I do that there are going to be challenges presented as we move forward and declarations get put forth in November. But at this point in time, it'd be hearsay for us to comment on what that would look like, because we don't know what direction that's going. Having students come back into face-to-face learning would be advantage to us. It would be much easier to do than students going the other way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Trustees, any further questions for Superintendent Norris on her report? Okay, if not, I guess next we have the Superintendent Ulichny.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Valentinas. Our nominal enrollment number at secondary is very healthy. We have 7,773 secondary students across 8 mainstream secondary schools and 1 adult campus. We have noticed an increase in growth at both of our IB sites, that's Assumption and Cardinal Carter, and we've maintained steady enrollment at our large schools of Holy Names, St. Anne, St. Joe's, and Villanova, with growth at St. Michael's in the adult campus. And we're very pleased with that growth, particularly in the adult ESL program. And those students also feed into our other programs within that individual campus. Back in the spring, we were very fortunate not to have to issue any layoff letters. And in order to accommodate the student requests, we have brought on 12 new additional secondary teachers this school year. All of our teaching staff are working in a multitude of different models. We have our cohort A and B students that are alternating between face-to-face and virtual. We have our cohort D students, which are full-time virtual. And in our board, we have approximately 21% of our students that have opted for cohort D. We have our cohort C students that are following a traditional timetable, or traditional semester timetable. And this is our students in our special education life skills program at secondary. And some of our cohort D students are working through Ministry of Education, D2L, Desire to Learn, True e-learning platform, and we have approximately 300 students that are working in that way. We have leveraged the technology. We're ready to pivot at a moment's notice with the ability to move in any direction that the ministry mandates, and we've been able to do it while maintaining the integrity of student schedules. Secondary is unique this year because we are operating a quadmester system. We will be making some minor shuffling adjustments in each of the quads, which is fairly traditional in secondary. We typically do this twice a year, at the beginning of the school year and at the midterm or the semester change. But with the quad, we have to do it a little bit more frequently, and we'll make those adjustments in order to meet the needs of our students with our staffing requirements along the way. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have regarding secondary and its status at this time.
Thank you, Superintendent Ulichny. Trustees, are there any questions? Superintendent? Of the in-person learning?
Sorry, Trustee Valentinas, you froze there, or is it just my screen?
Yeah, it's frozen. I'm sorry.
Okay, could you repeat your question, please?
Yeah, the question was, what is the percentage or the number of secondary students that have elected the in-class traditional learning?
I would have to do the mathematical calculation off the top of my head. It's about 1/7. So we've had over approximately 6,000 chose in-class learning and 1,000 are virtual.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody help me. Come on, Imelda, you're so quick in math. What's the answer?
Well, there's about 12 to 1,500 of the remote learners.
I didn't ask for the numbers. I want the percentage, Imelda. Don't stall.
Well, there's about 6,000 of your in-class students, whereas the other 12 to 1,500 are the virtual. So yeah, it's a good percentage, Chair Valentinas. Thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you. Thank you. Superintendent LaFaso. I'll find you. Director, I'm sorry, you can.
Thank you, Chair Valentinas. I think I can just add to what Superintendent Norris began as far as the virtual school. At the elementary virtual level, we do have 227 staff members who are working with our students. The majority, of course, are classroom teachers at 153 classrooms. I believe I mentioned before, we are offering a full complement of French immersion from K to grade 8. In addition to, we're trying to run the school very much like an in-person environment where supports are also in place. So we do have French as a second language for grades 4 to 8, as well as educational assistance support, English as a second language support, and as well as our educational assistants. In addition to 2 TELT positions, and these 2 positions basically support the technology that takes place every day, in addition to some of the professional development that our teachers are engaging in as we navigate through this Google Classroom and very new yet becoming a very normal way of schooling. So again, I can take any questions as well.
Thank you, Superintendent LaFaso. Trustees, any questions of Superintendent LaFaso?
I just have one. Is the virtual school the same amount of time as in person? Like, do they go like from 9 to 3 with breaks in between?
Through you, Chair Valentina's. Yes, actually what we have, the schedule is very much the same as a regular in-school schedule. We begin at 8:30 and we end the day at 3 p.m. We have 2 recess breaks and an hour lunch. So it runs very much similar to what a regular school day, so that when students do transition back, the routine is very similar.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Further questions from the trustees? Okay, before I just call the final vote, let me just say how very, very impressed, not that I doubted your ability, knowing the amount of work and appreciating what went into, making sure that this new school year startup was going to function and work. But I've been hearing nothing but positives, both in terms of the in-class and in terms of the virtual learning, both from parents and from students. So I think it's a testament to the hard work and the preparation and the giving up of your summer vacations that went into it. So kudos to our senior administration, to all the staff involved, because, things can still change, but boy, we had a very, very, very smooth functioning startup from the feedback I've been getting, and it's been very much appreciated. Thank you. So the motion's been moved and seconded to receive the verbal preliminary enrollment staffing school organization information report for September 2020. Anyone opposed? All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Thank you, and that motion carries. Moving on to committee reports. 11A is the report of the audit committee minutes of the public meeting of November 19th, 2019. I need a mover and a seconder for that.
Move, Polifroni.
Moved by Trustee Polifroni, support by
DeMena.
Trustee DeMena, that the board receive the minutes of the November 19, 2019 audit committee meeting as information. Any comments on that from administration? None. Any questions? If not, we'll call the vote. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you. 11B is a report of the Special Education Advisory Committee minutes of June 18th, 2020. I need a mover and a seconder for that.
I'll move it, DeMena.
Trustee DeMena moves it. Support?
Trustee Soulier.
Trustee Soulier, that the board receive the minutes of Thursday, June 18th, 2020 Special Education Advisory Committee meeting as information. Questions, comments? All in favor? Anyone opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 12, unfinished business. At the September 15th, 2020 special regular board meeting. Trustee Soulier, Vice Chair Soulier, introduce a notice of motion that at the next regularly scheduled meeting, that she was going to cause or move to be a notice of motion. And I guess, first of all, we need a mover and a seconder. So Trustee Soulier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the board requests that the Windsor-Essex Student Transportation Services require all students from JK to grade 12 from all boards to wear a mask while boarding, riding, and disembarking from a school bus, and that the board communicate this request to its coterminous boards to request their support and cooperation, and that the board's administration amend its COVID-19 procedure and back-to-school guidelines to include this requirement with regard to board-provided transportation to and from school, and communicate the requirement to all students and their families.
Thank you. It's been moved by Trustee Soulier. Is there a seconder for that motion?
I'll support it for discussion.
Trustee Bouchard supports it. Okay, it's been moved and supported. Trustee Soulier or Trustee Bouchard, is there anything you'd like to expand on or add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to the motion, I did provide quite a lot of explanatory material when I read the motion on the 15th, and it's contained there in the minutes. Just to summarize, though, I think it's important for anyone who can wear a mask to wear a mask, especially in those circumstances where it might be difficult to have that 6-foot distancing or 2-meter distancing. And on a bus, that would be certainly a problem. As well, it's you're in a contained or enclosed space, and as we move into winter, it's going to be a lot harder to leave windows open and all the rest of it. So I think that it's important that students wear masks while they're on the bus, regardless of their age. Of course, with the exemptions that exist for health purposes. That's basically why I'm moving the motions.
Thank you, Trustee Soulier. Trustees, comments, questions on the motion which has been moved?
I have a comment.
Trustee DeMena, please.
Okay. I do agree with the motion wholeheartedly, but I do have a concern on how it's going to be enforced, since the ministry has openly said that students between the JK and grade 3 do not have to wear masks. What's going to happen if you have a parent that totally refuses to have their child masked and does not have a medical issue? They just don't want them to wear the mask, and they use the ministry outline as a reason why, because they're saying that they don't have to. I agree that they should be wearing them because you can't isolate on a bus. I think they should be wearing them in the classroom also. However, we're going to have an enforcement issue, I think. And what if WEST tells us, no, we're not going to do that? I totally agree with the motion. I'd like to see it go through, but I just have a concern about how it's going to be administered and policed.
Thank you. Does administration have any guidance in that respect or comments?
It's an umbrella.
Somebody's got their mic on, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with respect to Trustee DeMena's comments, Trustee DeMena, if you remember correctly, in our back to school plan did recommend that students JK to 3 wear a mask. You're absolutely right. Enforcement will be a challenge. We will not be able to enforce that should a parent not wish to. Just in general, because we have nobody to back us up, even though the local health unit does support a recommendation of that, it's not enforceable at this time. But with respect to the consortium or West, there's a whole different conversation that needs to be had. I'm going to refer to Executive Superintendent King for how this will play out should trustees pass this motion this evening. So Executive Superintendent King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Director. So, as trustees are aware, and what the director just referenced, that the local health unit, Ministry of Ed, and student transportation currently strongly recommends but do not require masks to be worn by children in grades JK to 3 while on the school buses. Should this motion pass this evening, what would happen is I would bring it to the Student Transportation Consortium, or WECDSB, for consideration at the next Board of Directors meeting. As you're aware, the Student Transportation Consortium is a separate legal entity reporting to the Board of Directors, which is comprised of the 4 superintendents of business of the local school boards. And the consortium administers the policies set by the Board of Directors. So the next Board of Directors meeting is not yet set, but it's planned to be early to mid-October. And what would happen is that the recommendation would be discussed at that meeting by the Board of Directors. And in order for the policy to pass, there would need to be majority support, or 3 out of 4 votes. It is important to note that for a proposed transportation policy that originates not by WECDSB, but by one of the local boards, such as this one, to be enforceable, as we're referring to, it needs to move forward in the way that this motion is proposing. That is, it should go forward to student transportation as this motion is suggesting for consideration. And that's because the only policies and procedures that both the school bus operators and their drivers are required to follow are those of WECDSB. So if this was our own separate policy and it didn't apply to the other boards in the area and it didn't source from WECDSB, it would be confusing for the drivers and we wouldn't be able to require that they enforce it, and we wouldn't be able to effectively enforce it ourselves. So the way that it is going forward to the consortium as a recommendation for all boards is the best way that we have for this policy to be enforceable.
Thank you, Superintendent King. Trustees, are there further questions or comments on this motion?
I have a bit.
I'm sorry, someone was going to.
Yeah, can I? Stop laughing, Kim. All right. I'm getting an echo chamber here. Oh my God. Fred, I got a note now. Fred Alexander was removed from the meeting. I think it's Trustee Bouchard is up to all shenanigans. Anyway, if I can can anybody hear me other than myself? Oh, wonderful. I am trying very hard to come to grips with the intent of this motion. Notwithstanding the beautiful preamble, I don't know what this is intended to accomplish. First of all, you can't mandate this. The motion says that the board requests the Windsor Access Student Transportation Services, etc., and that the board communicate this request to its coterminous board to request their support and cooperation. I don't know what it is intended to accomplish. I mean, it's a feel-good motion. No offense meant, Trustee Soulier. Grades 4 to 12 are covered by mandate in terms of ministry regulations. So I don't know what the intent of this is. I mean, you can pass it, but what is it going to accomplish? It goes to the board of WECDSB, and they say it's great, pass it on. We can request the world, but you can't enforce it. You can't mandate it. You can urge, you request. whatever. But it's not the kind of motion that has any force in legal terms. So I don't know. If the mover can maybe expand on it a little bit more, or maybe she can draw on the preamble or whatever. I really don't know why this thing is even here. I really don't. I mean, we can't do anything except make us feel good.
I got something to say. Chair Valentines? I can't hear you.
Now you can hear me. Okay, I'm sorry. Trustee Polifroni.
I would think that this motion would, on behalf of Trustee Soulier, is because of safety or concern for safety for the children. And the parents are people outside the board that are concerned for the safety of the children. That would, I mean, she can speak for herself, but I'm sure that's a big part of it. Secondly, I have a question that if we pass it and it goes to the board and they pass it, doesn't it become mandated then once WEST pass it? That's the first question.
I think, again, I'll let administration speak, but my understanding is that the enforcement aspect is obviously problematic, as is all, a lot of masking requirements. But in this particular case, Mr. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to refer it to Executive Superintendent King because we've had plenty of conversation around this, and I'll defer to her at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Director. So it would, if the consortium passed this, it would be a policy of WEST's that WEST's would require the school bus operators and their drivers to follow. So it wouldn't be our own policy. It would be a WEST policy like all of the other policies that exist. I think the inherent challenge that was referred to earlier is if you do have a parent who, based on Ministry of Education guidelines or local health unit guidelines, may still want to refuse, but WEST would attempt to enforce it as the children in that age or in those grade categories get on the bus.
Thank you for that. Executive Superintendent King, can you please refer to how many votes we need at that meeting for this to go through?
We would need 3 out of the 4. 3 out of 4. There's 4 directors and 3 need to vote in favor of this for that to pass.
I have a question.
Thank you. Trustee DeMeno.
Do the other school board trustees have to approve this too, or does it just go directly to WEST?
Through Chair Valentines to Trustee DeMena, it would just go to WEST for the board of directors to vote on.
Okay.
For trustees' information, I can assure you that this has been a topic of conversation in other boards, and they are waiting to see what happens this evening. And I'm not so sure which way they're going to vote, but I can tell you that this has been a topic of conversation at the other boards.
I have a follow-up question, Chair Valentines.
Trustee Polifroni, please.
Okay, so say we pass it tonight, now, and it goes to WEST and they refuse it. Is there an appeal process or a mediation, something like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, Trustee Valentine. So you're absolutely correct. There is no appeal process as far as we know. That would be the decision, and that would be the end of the conversation moving forward.
Well, I guess we can just hope that if we pass it, they think like us in terms of safety. I understand that enforcing it would be, a challenge. I'm not sure how much of a challenge it is inside the school, but I don't it's probably not going to be any different. So I don't see why it wouldn't try to do it to keep as many people safe as possible, but we'll just wait and see and go from there.
Trustee Valentinus, I'd be remiss as director if I didn't have this conversation with the trustees. You are getting yourself into a dogfight in this situation should this get pushed forward this evening. I'm not trying to influence trustees to move one direction or another, but there will be a legal challenge, I would presume, from somebody, because we don't necessarily know what this is going to look like moving forward, because we would be going against. Currently, we have a strong recommendation that JK to grade 3s wear it. The challenge will be such as what Trustee Alexander referred to as enforcement and what that's going to look like, because I do think we will get some pushback on this for sure. I'm just sharing that information, making sure that trustees are aware of what this is going to look like moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Trustees, are there any further questions or comments?
I have a question.
Trustee Bouchard, please.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do we know other cities, other boards, if they have school buses that they're mandating masks for all students on them? Does anybody know that?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Bouchard, and to you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there are other boards that have that. They also have masks that they require them to wear masks, JK to 3, but when they say they require them, they don't enforce it. But they're saying it's required, but there's no enforcement behind that.
Okay.
I have a suggestion.
Know what the participation is like on the buses, or no? I'm just kind of throwing this out. I don't expect anybody to have that answer right now. I'm just wondering if anybody does know.
I can tell you that's a lot of our JK to grade 3s right now do wear masks on the bus as well as at school, but I can't tell you the numbers of what that looks like or how consistent that is either. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. And then just a quick little comment. I just wanted to expand on what Trustee Polifroni was mentioning about safety. There's also a huge consideration for the bus drivers, because we all know that there was, at the beginning of this, a shortage of bus drivers, and a number of those bus drivers are within a particular risk group, just based on their age alone. And I think that's something important to be considering in this motion. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Thank you.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, that's Trustee Domena.
Have we gotten any feedback from legal counsel about this motion at all, like how it would affect us in the long term?
No, we have not received legal counsel with respect to this specific motion, no.
I'd like to say something.
Trustee Alexander, please.
We're really getting ourselves into a pickle here. As much as we appreciate the safety of all the kids, all the children that we have, we cannot impose a legal requirement that is not legally required by the Ministry of Education. They have their regulations and specifically cover grades 4 to 12. So we are stuck with what we do with this motion. So I'm going to suggest that we defer this motion pending clarification from the ministry regarding the intent of this motion. I don't know how to put it any other way. So basically it's a deferral motion pending some kind of clarification from the ministry regarding our legal obligations in this regard. And again, the reason for the deferral is we can't impose this on people. We can recommend, we can urge, we can suggest, but we cannot mandate it. I mean, we can have in our policy that we strongly recommend that these young people wear masks, and I'll certainly be in favor of that. But once you start putting this in the form of a policy, then you're going to create problems for yourself. So the only other alternative is to defeat the motion and I don't know if that's appropriate at this time. So the deferral motion is my suggestion as a way out of this pickle. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment. Will this have to be deferred to the next public meeting, or can it be deferred so that we get some legal counsel on this, like a short-term deferral?
Okay, first of all, we need clarification on the deferral motion. The motion is to defer it, and I think Trustee Alexander made reference to getting some guidance from the ministry. Is that the intent, that the guidance comes from the ministry? So
yeah, from the ministry, yes, that's the intent. Sure, that's the intent of the deferral motion. If you want to get some suggestions from the legal people, that's fine. But essentially, this is since the ministry is driving the entire issue with regards to COVID. We may want to do something. We may like to do something. We would, like to do all kinds of things. But until this has the blessing of the ministry, we're opening ourselves up to a lot of problems. As I said, whatever we have in our policy, if you have, you can suggest, you can strongly recommend, but I don't think you can demand that people wear these masks. So it's basically a deferral motion. So whenever time we can get some clarification from the ministry.
Okay. So the motion has been made to defer it. I think that has to be dealt with before we can go back to the main motion. So on the motion to defer it, any questions or comments?
I do have a question.
I think you need a seconder, Mr. Chair, with respect.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Before we move to that, I'd like to hear Ms. Sulier's comment prior to, because it's her motion that we're deferring. So with all due respect, I'd like to hear what she's got to say and then move from that to the next phase.
Well, okay. So before the motion can properly be there, I believe, as Trustee Alexander said, we should have it seconded. Now, is there a seconder for the deferral?
I second.
I'm sorry, that's, okay.
Trustee Heath.
Okay, so now it's been seconded. Now, going back to Trustee Mastromati, question was, Trustee Soulier, your comments on the motion to defer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a couple of questions with regard to deferral. Trustee Alexander's comment with regard to voting the motion down and killing it or deferring it. If WEST is going to meet in October, and obviously we won't have any answer to the deferral by the time they meet, when would the next meeting be? And really, is deferral avoiding killing the motion, or is it in effect killing the motion, just in with a different weapon?
So that was a comment rolled into a question. Okay. Trustees, any further comments on it?
Just a question. Can I have a response to the question from Superintendent King with regard to projected future meeting of WEST?
Certainly, through you, Chair Valentinas, to Vice Chair Soulier. We don't have the October meeting set, but again, it's planned for mid to early October. There isn't a set schedule beyond that point. In a regular status quo type year, the meetings can be infrequently as, maybe 6 meetings a year, 4 meetings a year. I could request that the general manager call a meeting in, say after the October one, but not that far, not months before the next one in order to address the issue. But I'd have to have that conversation with the general manager of WESTS.
For point Penny, for a point of clarification, so make sure everybody understands, it's my understanding that this would go forward, if this went forward, and West would be change their policy, and West would be responsible for enforcing their policy, and in order for students to ride the bus, they would have to be masked, correct? If West passed this policy?
That's correct.
And because education is considered, in the Education Act, transportation is not considered compulsory, I'm not so sure where this would stand, and I'm not so sure where our legal would stand, if it would be West that would be getting sued or whether it would be the school board getting sued. I'm not sure where that would come from. The Ministry of Education will not provide us advice. They provided advice in the return to school document, and the return to school document says it is recommended that it's required at all 4 to 12 and recommended that JK to 3 wear a mask. The only recommendation or the only information we would get would be from our board legal. That would be the only information we would have access to. And I'm not so sure what that would look like for West in terms of if a parent was interested in going after West, because it wouldn't necessarily be linked directly to our board. We'd be a secondary link, but as you can see, it gets very convoluted, and that's where we would land at this point in time.
Mr. Valentinus?
Trustee Mastromati.
Okay, I'm getting a sense that, with all due respect to Ms. Soulier and her wonderful intent, we're beating our heads against the wall. What I'm sensing here is that we should defeat, at least I'm going to move towards defeating the motion and wishing everybody well, because we're getting into a fight, a gunfight, and we don't even have a water gun. So I hate to put it this way, but I'm going to vote no on the motion, and I don't see any wisdom in deferring. And that's just me. Thank you.
So right now, we're dealing with the motion to defer. Are there any further comments, questions before we call the vote on the deferral?
I have a question. It's more clarification. Chair Valentia.
Trustee Polifroni, please.
Okay, so right now, am I correct in saying when they go to school from 4 to 12, they all wear the mask, wear a mask, or, you try to get them to wear a mask in school, correct?
All students are required to wear a mask. That is correct.
But not between JK and 3, though?
That is correct, Trustee Polifroni.
Okay.
Recommended, but we cannot enforce it at the school level.
Okay, so moving forward, when they leave the school and go into the bus, they have the option of going, like they go all in there maskless?
JK to 3s are recommended to wear a mask. Should they choose to, or should their parents have them wear a mask, they wear a mask. Should they choose not to, they do not wear a mask.
No, that's not my question. So when they leave the school to enter the bus, right, they can just take their mask off and go into the bus maskless right now, regardless of the grade?
No. 4 to 12s have to wear a mask on the bus as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Final questions, comments on the motion to defer as made by Trustee Alexander and supported by Trustee Heath. Okay, if not, we'll call the question on the motion to defer. All those in favor? How many are opposed? All those opposed.
I am.
This is opposed to the motion to defer.
Correct.
I'm opposed. Trustee Dominguez is opposed to deferral.
I'm sorry? Okay, hold on. Let's go through this. Trustee Soulier is opposed to the motion to defer. Trustee Mastromati is opposed to the motion to defer. Trustee Polifroni is opposed on the motion to defer. And I don't see on my screen, Trustee Domena is opposed to the motion to defer. That motion fails. Okay, the deferral motion fails, which as a result leaves us with the main motion, which has been moved by Trustee Soulier and supported by Trustee I believe, with Bouchard. Are there any further comments or questions on the main motion as presented on the notice of motion?
Just wondering, Mr. Chair, will I have an opportunity to close with comments?
This is the time. First of all, anyone else have any further comments on that? On the main motion? Trustee Soulier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in responding to some of the questions that were raised, I totally agree with Trustee Alexander. We don't have very much control over what our transportation company policies are. And as Superintendent King indicated, this would be the way to convey to them that we would like to see a stronger policy in place with regard to masking. I think that it would also be important to simply have it as a requirement as opposed to a recommendation. Yeah, and as Trustee Polifroni said, it's all about student safety. And I think it would be up to the transportation company to look at it from their perspective and to decide on what that policy would look like. But I do think that it's important as a board that we convey that we think that that's something that would help to provide safety for students while they're being transported to and from school, given that they're in a confined space. So that's all I have. I stand behind my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Soulier. Okay, it's been moved. It's been supported. I'm going to call the vote then on the notice of motion as presented. All in favor? I've got Trustee Soulier, Trustee Polifroni, Trustee Alexander. I'm not sure if your hand is up or not. No. Okay. Trustee Heath, Master Matty.
Chair Valentines, do I got this correct? We're voting in favor because I thought Bernie would.
Hold on. The motion as presented by Trustee Soulier and supported by Trustee Bouchard.
I'm in favor.
In favor. So all those in favor, okay, of that motion. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't quite see everyone on my screen here. So Trustee Heath?
Trustee Valentin, Chair Valentinas, can we do it like each person say yes or no? Because I don't see anybody's hands up at all.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let's go through this then. Trustee Soulier is in support.
In favor.
In favor. Trustee Polifroni. Trustee Polifroni?
Sorry, in favor.
In favor. Trustee Alexander. Trustee Alexander?
No, definitely opposed.
Opposed? Trustee Heath?
In favor.
In favor. Trustee Mastromati?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee Domena?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee Tomaso?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee, well, it passes. Okay, so that motion passes. And as the motion reads, it the request will be forwarded on to the Windsor Student Transportation Services. And we'll go from there. As you can see from the debate, it's we all agree with the intent, but in terms of the motion that's going to, and its enforcement and implementation, we'll have to take it step by step. But I think Superintendent King explained it very well at the beginning that this is a process you would have to follow for even to be considered, and that's what we do. Thank you. Any further notices of motion being brought forward at this time? Item number 13, under new business, the naming of the virtual school. Mr. Director. Oh, need a mover and a seconder.
Soulier moves.
Trustee Soulier moves it. Support.
Polifrone.
Trustee Polifrone. That the board approve the name of the elementary virtual school derived from the consultation process. Mr. Director, going to explain to us the consultation process and what the result was.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to defer to Superintendent LaFazio, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Chair Valentinas. I'm going to attempt to present my screen right now.
Yeah.
And that'll just be a brief explanation. Okay. So I assume everyone can see naming of the elementary virtual school.
I'm sorry, Trustee Alexander, maybe if we can mute the mic, we're getting some feedback. Yeah, thank you.
Superintendent LaFazio, you don't have presentation at this point in time.
I don't have presentation. Okay. I'll try again. Sorry.
There you go, Superintendent LaFazio. It's coming up right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. We began the process of naming our virtual elementary school, and we engaged a number of our stakeholders. Namely, we asked stakeholders what their opinion would be as far as naming our new school, and we sent messages through email and through school messenger, and our response was overwhelming and positive. We received 98 different suggestions and 147 total suggestions and recommendations. As you can see from the first one, we took a look at some of the responses.
I'm sorry, is everyone able to see this?
No, it says Rosemary says you are presenting, but there's nothing on the screen.
Sorry, I'll try one more time.
There you go. You're good.
Here we go. Yep.
Oh, there you go. You're good.
That's right. All right, so one of the first recommendations was St. Corona because of the pandemic. And the following slides are actually slides from student work. A number of our teachers created lessons that really got our imagination going and also some creativity as well. Another one was virtual stay at home. The name was suggested so that we as a whole remain at home so that we stay safe and keep the virus from going around. We also saw much more of an academic focus with our older students. This was one of the templates for a grade 7 class where the actual students had to do a little bit of research, provide a visual and an explanation as to what their choice would be. Some of our youngest learners also contributed to suggestions as far as our new naming of our new school. If you take a look at this list, this comes from a JKSK class where we have Mouseketeers and Pumpkin School. Teacher explained that their names are written on pumpkins, and so the students believe that this would be the natural choice for our school as far as a new name. But we also see even our youngest learners focus on our Catholicity, Catholic digital learners, and Catholic cyber achievers. So it was very nice to see that we got a very mixed response. The top 3, however, as ranked as follows. Number 3, we had St. Thomas of Aquinas, who's a patron saint of students and education. And we had about 5 out of the 147 students had decided that this would be the perfect name. Interesting enough, one student actually noted that St. Thomas was in Paris, and since we have French in schools, that this would be a natural choice for this one student. Our second runner-up was St. Raphael, which really shows the intuitiveness of some of our students as the healer. So they felt that during this time of pandemic, this would be a perfect choice for our school. The most popular, however, is St. Isidore. So St. Isidore Catholic Virtual Elementary School. We had 18 responses come in. St. Isidore is known as a patron saint of computers and the internet. This one student, if you can read the screen, says that not only did he suggest that it would be St. Isidore, but also made a suggestion that the school mascot should be RAM, as it's an acronym for Random Access Memory, which is the short-term data storage of the computer. So we saw quite a few very creative and inspiring messages. And in the end, our recommendation is the name of our new school would be St. Isidore Catholic Elementary Virtual School. And I'm willing to take any questions or comments, but our recommendation is as stands.
Wow, that's quite the list. You talk about creativity and ingenuity. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that? That's phenomenal. Both when I originally heard the number of 147 submissions, but then when you look at the different, the different submissions from what was it? Happy Turtles is one, and from the JK and younger students all the way up. That's a phenomenal response. But thank you. And I know personally, I learned I didn't realize I had computers back then, but I read their background, and I get now the St. Isidore and why he is a patron saint of computers and such. But having said that, trustees, questions, comments? No comments, no questions.
I got a question for Father Larry. Is he still around there? I don't see him.
Father Larry? Okay, he must have just stepped out right now. I don't see him.
Okay, no problem.
No,
There is a,
there he is. He's on.
He's on. Okay.
Is there really a Saint Corona, or is that just?
No, there isn't. I'm sorry. No, there isn't, trustee.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for your wisdom, Father Larry.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, just with regard to the motion, are we required to make an amendment to the motion actually naming the school?
Okay, the motion reads that the board approve the name of the elementary virtual school derived from the consultation process. So it doesn't name it, as you said. It simply says the school derived from the consultation process, and the recommendation, I think, was for the one that received the most popular votes. But again, I'll take my lead. Administration, do we want to amend or add to that? Do you have some wording, Trustee Soulier, you would suggest?
I would just add to the end of the motion, and that the new virtual school be named St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Elementary Virtual School.
Okay.
That's fine.
That's fine. Okay, I'll need a seconder then for that, to the mover and the second. Whoa.
I second. Polifroni.
Okay, Polifroni. So we've added now the actual name of St. Isidore Catholic secondaries. I'm sorry, Catholics. What is it here? I don't have it here for St. Isidore. You've got it there in front of you?
St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Elementary Virtual School.
Okay. Catholic. Okay. Does everyone have that? So the motion as amended. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Anyone opposed to that? We now have a name for the new virtual. Thank you to everyone for all their work on that, and excellent. I suggested earlier if there were any further notices of motion. I'll ask once again, are there any other notices of motion being brought forward tonight? That leaves us to the last part of the agenda, which is the remarks and announcements. The regional meeting was held last week, and some of the trustees participated. There was questions, both local, provincial, prepared in advance. These were shared with the trustees in the region, and it was informative. One of the things I'm getting out of these meetings, the regional meetings and the meetings with OCSTA, is that we've been, I don't want to use the word fortunate, but I guess, call it fortunate, compared to some of the challenges that some of the other boards have had in getting this back to school, getting their schools back up and running, we've been very, very fortunate. And as I said before, this really is a testament, I think, to the work that our administration and our staff have done in getting our schools ready, and the planning that went into it, and the long hours and commitment. So that really, I think, was the best part to, like I said, because I know some of the other boards are really struggling, and some are having horrendous issues with the busing in terms of having to cancel routes. And you can imagine how that plays out when you're canceling, quite a few routes, and people aren't able to traditionally get to school, and the impact that has and how disruptive that can be. So having said that, we are not going to meet again publicly until after Thanksgiving. So I want to wish the staff and their families a safe, relaxing, and blessed day. Take a couple days that weekend to maybe just pause and recoup yourself and pat yourselves on the back, and come back refreshed, on there. So that leaves me then, Mr. Director, in terms of Director of Education. Before I close the meeting, though, maybe we can have a comment of the dates that people, we've talked about switching back and forth, where parents have to notify the school board, and then it takes effect. And the first of that is coming up near the end of October, end of October, and then to be implemented for the beginning of November. Do we have those dates handy so we can again remind, because this is a public meeting, what those dates are for those parents that have to notify the school board? And
we have that information now, Chair Valentinas, if you'd like it.
Thank you. If as part of your comments, perhaps, Mr. Director, the floor is yours.
So looking back on our successes, the virtual system-wide Together in Faith Day was held on September 3rd. We felt this year, especially more than others, was the time to gather and celebrate our faith. Thank you to Father W.E.C.D.S.B from Assumption Paris for a beautiful homily. And obviously, thank you to Father Larry for also participating in the Mass. Looking ahead, October 5th is World Teacher Day. If any time, any year they deserve it more than any, it would be this year. This day represents a significant token of the awareness, understanding, and appreciation displayed for the vital contribution that teachers make to education and development. I want to also take this opportunity to wish everybody a happy and relaxing Thanksgiving. And for all of our parents out there, the date for opt-in out of elementary is Monday, October 19th. 2 weeks to prepare so students can begin on October 30th or November 2nd for their new start. And with that, I'd like to wish all trustees a happy Thanksgiving as well.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Father Larry, Board Chaplain.
Thank you, Mr. Valentinas. Do you believe in angels? It was interesting that one of the recommendation was St. Raphael. Briefly, I'm just refreshing our memory that our church teaches us. This is from the compendium of the Catholic Catechism. The church in her profession of faith proclaims that God is the creator of everything, visible and invisible, of all spiritual and corporal beings, that is, of angels and of the visible world, and in a special way, man and woman. So the Catechism clearly states that in our Catholic faith, we believe in angels. I hope you do too. I'm sure you do. Angels, here's a good little thing about them. They are purely spiritual, incorporeal, invisible, immortal, endowed with intelligence and free will. Interesting. And that explains why there's a devil, Satan, right? He had a free will and he rebelled against God. He wasn't going to follow the will of God. So that's how Satan came about. That's how the evil spirits came about. Finally, something about guardian angels. Do you believe you have a guardian angel? Well, the church teaches, besides each believer stands an angel as a protector and shepherd leading him or her in life. Your guardian angel. I'm sure you may not be aware of it, but there are times when your guardian angel has kept you from harm. Here's a little prayer that some of you, I'll say another prayer regarding today's feast day at the end. But here's a prayer that some of you may have learned or your parents taught you. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here, ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. That's your guardian angel prayer. So I'm sure the guardian angel was here. All of our guardian angels were here tonight among us. So St. Raphael is one of the three today. In our closing prayer, I'll mention the other two, St. Michael and St. Gabriel and St. Raphael. They're the feast day today of the three archangels. Thank you, Mr. Valentinus.
Thank you, Father Larry. Remarks, questions by trustees. Trustee Alexander.
And nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bouchard.
I'd just like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving as well. And also, I'm very happy to share that October is International Walk to School Month. As everybody knows, this is something that is near and dear to my heart and my feet. So all about encouraging active school travel, and hopefully October stays nice enough for everybody to walk.
Thank you, Trustee Bouchard. Trustee Mestre-Mate.
I just like to compliment administration specifically and everybody within the system on having such, I think, a phenomenal, uneventful, and very focused start to the new year. I want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving, and thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Mestre-Mate. Trustee Polifroni.
I just want to say kudos pre-World Teacher Day to all the teachers of the world that have been teaching, through this pandemic. And also on October the 7th, St. Michael Adult Secondary will be having their 2020 graduation. And that just so happens to be a school that I represent as trustee. So I want to congratulate all the graduates from that school. Also, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to the whole board that is in front of us right now, and for everyone. And I pray keep praying that, we can get through this safe and sound and as quick as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Polifroni. Trustee Heath.
Just also like to thank administration for the tremendous work, and thank our communications coordinator for speaking so well on our behalf when it comes to media. Our best foot is being put forward, and that's tremendous. And again, wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Trustee Heath. Trustee Domena.
I also want to thank everybody for such a smooth opening of our schools, whether students went in virtually or whether they physically attended. Everything went so smoothly, and it was no problem. We didn't get a lot of complaints. We didn't hit the paper, so that was good. We did good things. And I also want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Trustee DiTomaso.
I agree with Trustee Domena, and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and a safe one.
Thank you, Frank. Vice Chair Soulier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and I continue to hope and pray for continued mild fall weather so we can continue to enjoy our outdoors. Thank you.
Well said. Student Trustee Malott.
Yes, thank you. So Roman and I had our very first Senate meeting last week, so we're able to bring you a report today. So we got to meet all of the new student senators and the new prime ministers and deputy prime ministers from all of the schools throughout the school board, to which none really had anything to report. There's really nothing going on in schools in regards to student council, just because, you know, kind of a slow start, which is not bad. I mean, obviously safety first. So, you know, student councils are finally getting back together virtually, able to talk about plans for the future, but there's not many right now. Roman and I are in the middle of figuring out what's going to happen for Faith Day, but as of now, it looks like the entire thing is going to be virtual, and this is a day-by-day thing, right? So we decided that our board-wide initiative is going to be Recovering Together from COVID-19, which is the initiative from Development and Peace, which discusses the impacts on various communities and vulnerable groups that have faced and are still facing today the results of a pandemic. And there is no set date to our Faith Day yet, but we are planning on having it traditionally like we normally do before Christmas break, sometime in December. And that's all there is to report from the student trustees.
Thank you, Trustee Malat. I'm sorry, is Student Trustee Oglin with us?
Yep, I'm right here.
Roman?
I just wanted to personally thank everyone in the school board for working just so hard, so diligently to keep me, Jada, and all of our all the fellow students safe, and to give us such a smoothly run first few weeks of school. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to both of you for your great enthusiasm and commitment and the work that you're doing and keeping us informed with respect to the actual student body. Thank you. Under pending items, there are none at this time. The future regular board meetings, the next one would be October 27th in terms of the public, and the committee of the whole board will be held on the second Tuesday of each month. There's no necessity to adjourn to in camera, and we'll ask Father Larry if you could close the meeting with a prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suspect that many, well, I'm not sure. We're all Canadians. I suspect some might be watching that debate tonight. Mr. Valentinus, are you committing yourself? No?
Absolutely, we'll be watching it, Father.
Anyway, let me close with a reminder that today is the feast of 3 archangels. Well, let's not go into all of that. Angels, archangels. But these are archangels. So St. Michael, St. Gabriel, and St. Raphael. And St. Michael is the one that helps us in the battle against Satan. He's the one that is able to defeat Satan. So when you find yourself tempted by Satan, as we all are from time to time, St. Michael is the guy to speak to. St. Gabriel, he's well known in Scripture, isn't he? He's the one that brought good news to Mary and good news to Joseph. St. Raphael, has been mentioned by one of our students. He's the healer. And so we've been pray to him tonight that he will lead us in the path of complete healing. St. Raphael, complete healing of the COVID-19 pandemic. As always, we pray through Christ our Lord and through the powerful intercession of our Blessed Mother. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.